Hi guys, so welcome back to Lex Reads. So in today's video, I actually want to talk about books that have changed my perspective on life or my, reading. And these books have had an impact on me. And I cannot get them out of my head. I cannot get the characters out of my head. And I want to share four with you that, like I said, it's just been such a eye opener. So the first book is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. Now, I read this book about 2 years ago, and this is a book where I only can read it once because this book had so much trauma where trauma was an understatement. This book deals with four young men. The main person that was just, his life was, like I said, trauma's understatement. His name is Jude St. Francis. This book deals with, there's really no theme or plot. They're just four best friends that you see them when they are introduced to each other when they're about like a freshman in college. So about 18, 17, 18, all the way into their 50s. And you just see how they just go on with life. But the main things in this book is sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual trauma towards a minor. It deals with pedophilia. It deals with homosexuality. It deals with self-harm. What else? I mean, it's a lot. And I have never read a character that has dealt with so much like Jude St. Francis has. She wrote this, it was so real where you felt like you knew Jude St. Francis, like he lived out in this world. I wanted to go to New York where this book was set and talk to Jude. That's how deep it was. And I think also too, this book also has my heart because the main protagonist reminds me of my uncle. Jude was a sickly person. My uncle was a sickly person. And whether, just being so woe and sad, about being sick because it was always another illness. Jude was like, what can we do next? And that's how my uncle was. And I think that's one reason why I really did felt a special connection to Jude, because he reminded me so much of my uncle. So yeah, like I said, this is a one and done. I can't read this anymore. I don't need to, because I know I cannot forget what happened throughout this book. Next, of course, is I Know Where the Caged Bird Sings. First book I read on my own when I was 14. Had so many similarities, growing up with a grandmother from the South. I had a grandmother from the South. Being the youngest, I'm the youngest. I mean, so much. I love her writing. I love this story. And this is not just a story for Black girls. It's a story for every girl. But of course, it's going to have a special place for, Black little girls and Black women. Because that's what Maya does. She has a special place in all of our hearts. And especially mine. So, yeah. Next is Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This is another eye-opener. Chimamanda has a way of, once you read her literature, you just feel so intellectual. You feel like you just know so much. She also makes you aware of a lot of things in society. She also talks about things that are that you wouldn't normally just feel comfortable talking about, and especially being a Black individual in America. One topic that she talked about was hair, and specifically Black hair. Black hair is, oh Lord, it is a thing in itself, and it can be hard to maintain, hard to know what to do with it. And I feel like I have, for the last about 5 years, now know how to manage my hair and all of that. It's an art in Black hair. And she talks about that. She talks about the struggle of that. She talks about the struggle of being a Black in America. Things that we don't normally we would say in closed settings, but we wouldn't say in an open setting. She does that for you, and she gets it spot on. And I just adore Chimamanda. She is one of my favorites. I know she's kind of controversial, but I love Chimamanda. I honestly do. Next is, I actually have 5, not 4. Bernice L. McFadden, Praise Song for the Butterfly. This is my favorite book of all times. This introduced me to African literature. This talks about a girl named Mabel Kata, who is from a fictional African village, and she is basically in a shrine for 15 years. A shrine is basically slavery. In Africa, they have this practice called Chikozi, where you pay for your family's sins. It can be something as like fornication, having a baby out of wedlock. It can be lying, and you pick a family member and they pay for your sins, and they basically live in a shrine until the day they die. And Obeo was in that shrine for 15 years, and you basically see how she has to navigate life in that shrine and outside of that shrine. And this is a real practice that is still that still goes on in Africa. I think it's Uganda is the main one, if I'm not mistaken. And these girls in these shrines, they deal with sexual abuse, they deal with physical abuse. You work night and day, you get little food, and you can be babies, you know, going into that shrine. And Bernice makes you aware of that culture, and her writing is like no other. She is my favorite author of all times. And this was another eye-opener, and I adore Obeo. And lastly which is a recent read, and it is Yellow Wife by Sadiqa Johnson. The reason why this has changed my perspective on life and in my reading is it's a different take on slavery. I was that type of person where, and I'm like so embarrassed now to say it, when I would see an author come out with a book and it's about slavery, I'm like, oh, another slave narrative or another slave book. Don't think like that. Don't have that mentality, because slavery is beyond brutality, and slavery just happened. So many things happen in slavery that we will never even know. And it's a gift to have an author talk about slavery and even revisit and research slavery, because that is beyond brutality. And one thing that Sadiqa Johnson said, she said, you know, imagine living through slavery. So she said, the least that I can do as a writer is write it, and the least that you can do as a reader is read it. This talks about the, inspired by the Lumpkin jail. It was a woman named Mary Lumpkin who was a slave, but she was brought to the Lumpkin jail. And Robert Lumpkin, he was known for just doing horrible things to slaves. He had a jail, so if your slave needed to be taught a lesson, you take him to that jail. And he just did unbelievable things that you don't even want to mention or talk about. But he married a slave. He married Mary, and he had 4 children by her. And this, you know, it's like, okay, it's contradicting, because you have this, you know, this work that you do with this jail where it's brutality, you kill, you torture, you know, Black individuals, but your wife is Black and you have 4 kids by her and you married her. And it's inspired by that. And you basically see in this book, Phoebe, see how she navigates being and living with Reuben, and having these 4 beautiful children. And such an eye-opener, and it's a true story. It's based on, like I said, Robert and Mary Lumpkin, and to see how these girls, these slaves, had to live, had to endure, it's just unbelievable. And now I have, after reading this, like I said, I have a different perspective on slavery, and I never want to, you know, have that mentality like, oh, another slave narrative. No, because we need them. Continue to put those stories out because they need to be put out. And I can go on and on about this book. I've read this twice. This is my second copy. So yeah, guys, that's all I have. I just wanted to talk about, these books that have changed, really have changed my life, or changed my reading. I got back into reading because it was a way for me to grieve. I had lost, my aunt, my uncle, and my grandmother all in a span of a year. And that was just, I was raised by my aunt and my uncle, my aunt and my grandmother, and to have them not here anymore it's still a challenge. And reading, reading was a way to cope. And I'm just so glad that I'm able to, these novels in my life have, these beautiful authors, especially these beautiful Black authors that just, old and young, that can tell a story. It really is a gift, you guys. It honestly is. And anyone that is struggling with death in particular, pick up a book, read a book, because just try it and see, and if it does work, because for me it really did. And now it's become this thing where it's like I'm going to bookstores every week. I'm talking about books all the time. I love it. So I just want to share with you guys my top 5 of books that changed my life. So yeah, that's all I have for you, and I'll be back with more Black books. Bye.